Hello, everyone. Are we doing okay? Did we find the room? We managed it, right? I have an ask of you, and that is, I know that it's a crowded space in general out there, but I would love for you to sit a little closer to your neighbors. So can I encourage everybody to move towards the front of the room? You can do it. I believe in you.
This isn't law school. You can't hide in the back.
No hiding in the back. We want you to be close to other...
This is my favorite right now. He's like, I'm here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A favorite. Thank you. So if you have someone that is close to you, close enough that you could have a quick conversation, then you're good. If you do not have someone that close to you, please find a place in the room where you are that close. All right, you are joining us for our workshop today, which is applying the 2023 Legal Trends Report insights to your firm. So welcome. We'll be going through introductions here. We'll be level setting with an understanding of the 2023 LTR. I know you got a taste of it this morning. How many of you were in Joshua's session at 1 o'clock? Yeah, a couple of you? Okay, some of you have gotten the deep dive, but it is an incredibly dense report this year, so we want to make sure that we're helping you orient around the pieces that we're going to be working through today. Then we're going to look at how your firm compares. We're going to go through next steps, and then we'll end with some tips around fostering change at your firm. So, welcome to the session. My name is Erin Walker. I am the Director of Marketing Strategy and Enablement here at Clio, and I have been at Clio. This is my 7th ClioCon. However, it is my first in person, so I'm so delighted to see all of you in person this time around. And I'm joined on stage by the incomparable Joshua Lenon. Joshua, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Joshua Lenon. I'm the lawyer in residence at Clio, which is a made-up title. For 11 years, I, as an attorney licensed in the state of New York, have been translating how law firms think and operate to a technology company. And every now and then I get to go vice versa and translate technology back to you guys. It's actually been an incredibly rewarding experience to help research and dive into what makes law firms better. And by better, I mean sustainable and less soul-sucking. So that's our goal for today, is how can we help you make the practice of law just a little bit easier?
Fantastic. And we're also joined in the room by Ardo. Ardo, can you throw your hand up? It is very bright. Okay, he is back there. I was pretty sure. Ardo is one of our staff data scientists here at Clio, and he's a key member of the team who creates the Legal Trends Report. So if you get stuck at any point, you can throw a hand up, and Ardo will come by and help you with any of the calculations we're going to do on your worksheet. Maybe. There we go. Okay. Now we're good. Okay, so we want to kick it off by getting a sense of where you're struggling. So we're going to be really honest with each other today. So if I ask you to scan the QR code, it's going to bring up a poll that's going to give you options to answer the question on screen. Which of these areas is most painful for you in your practice today? So the options you'll see on screen are calendaring, documents, that would include drafting, getting them signed, storing them, finding them, collaborating in them. Tracking is your next option. This would include expenses, revenue, or interactions with clients. It would also, your next option is firm operations. So how are you getting your employees paid, for example? Multitasking and context switching. So if you're managing multiple phone calls, you're switching between tasks a lot. Collecting payments from your clients. And finally, marketing. And no, I will not be offended if you pick marketing as the most difficult one.
Has everybody actually gone ahead and loaded this poll? Because we will be using the responses here. So thank you for participating.
Awesome. Thank you.
Does anybody need more time?
Feeling good? We're poll champions here. All right, could we get the results, please? Ooh. Multitasking leading the way. We got a couple of responses still coming in. Fantastic. So the point of this exercise is really to show you that while it is the problems you're facing are not unique to you alone. In fact, the people in this room are struggling with a lot of the exact same things. So you have a superpower here, which is to tap into the people around you facing these same challenges and find the ways that are going to incite meaningful change within your own firm. I'll quote Amy Poehler if you'll let me, but find a group of people who challenge and inspire you, spend a lot of time with them, and it will change your life. We don't have a lot of time together, but I will really encourage you to take advantage of it and learn from each other. So let's get started. There we go. I'm going to pass it over to Joshua, and he's going to give us a summary of the top learnings from the Legal Trends Report.
So I just did an hour-long summary of the Legal Trends Report. We will not be doing that much, but I do want to tell you some of the top learnings that we received as a part of the Legal Trends Report. How many people are actually just familiar with the Legal Trends Report in general? Well, that's good. That's good. We're becoming aware. Yeah. So for those of you who aren't, the Legal Trends Report is a report that we publish every year utilizing data contributed in an anonymized aggregate fashion from all of the law firms using Clio across the United States. And so it's tens of thousands of lawyers and other non-lawyer legal professionals telling us how they use Clio via direct data, and then us interpreting that as a part of the Trends Report. Now, I do want to stress it's not your client files. It's how you're using Clio. So I have the ability to set an hourly rate. And so we can see a bell curve of hourly rates. And we can interpret that, not as in which lawyer is charging which fee, but in the whole, out of this giant mass of lawyers, $327 is the most common hourly rate in North America right now. So there are some key takeaways from the 2023 Legal Trends Report that I want to share with you quickly. The first of which is that law firms are improving. Now, we've been measuring law firms as a part of our Legal Trends Report since 2016. And since 2016, what we've seen is that the amount of matters or cases being worked upon by a timekeeper has actually increased 25% in the last 8 years. The amount of billable hours recorded by timekeepers has increased 35%. And that, because of realization rates and collection rates improving, has translated to law firms billing and collecting 70+% more revenue than they were collecting in 2016. It's actually a really big jump, 3/4 improvement. But what we're actually showing you is the amount adjusted for inflation and adjusted for the increases in hourly rates that a lot of law firms do every year. If we actually unskew those numbers, even though they're not technically skewed, in terms of real dollars, what we see is that the amounts billed and amounts collected have actually grown over 150% since 2016. This is a huge jump in productivity and in revenue for law firms, and it's actually something very exciting to see. As part of last year, we actually really jumped into why 2020 was an inflection year. So if you haven't read the 2022 Legal Trends Report, that's a good one to download too. And so if the average timekeeper is earning nearly 3/4 more revenue for their law firm, what are some of the things contributing to that improvement? We believe the law firm key performance indicators, or KPIs, are actually one of the strongest indicators of this increased performance in law firms. The first of that is utilization rate, which is the number of hours that you bill in a day versus the number of work hours available in that day. And so the number for law firms in 2023 is 37%. You guys are actually billing about 37% of your day. Well, you're recording billable time, for about 37% of your day. And the reason I had to correct myself is when we go to our next one, which is realization rate, which is the number of those recorded hours divided by the number of hours that you actually put on the bill. So we see lawyers give themselves haircuts here quite a bit. But the realization rate for law firms in 2023 is forecasted to be 86%. The last KPI, but a very important one, is collection rate. Of the number of hours that you actually send out to a client on a bill after you've given yourself a haircut, how many of those will they actually pay? And what we have seen is that the collection rate forecast for 2023 is 89%. That's actually a drop from the high of 90% that we recorded in 2021. And that kind of leads me to my next point, which is that your law firm can improve further. There's room to grow. If I'm only doing 37% of my day in terms of billable work, that means between all of those cuts along the way, that I'm really only doing revenue generating work for about 28% of my day. Now that's better than the 18% that you see on the far right here. But it still means that there's 72% of our day that's being spent on administrative work, non-billable work, business development, often crucial things, but maybe not the best focus for your time in that big an amount. And so when we look at what we call our lawyer funnel, I think this really demonstrates where we have difficulty in conceptualizing how our day is being spent. So right now, the average lawyer utilizing Clio is only recording about 2.9 hours a day. It's a big increase from what we saw back in 2016, but it's not yet 3 hours even. After you give yourself that haircut, you're only invoicing 2.5 of those hours. And then when the client gets that invoice, they go too high and cut you down to 2.2 hours a day. You can see how it just slices its way along. And those are kind of your daily metrics, what's happening on your day-to-day. We also published a new metric that we're calling lockup. Lockup is an accounting metric that asks a really simple question. Is your earned revenue in your bank account, or is it locked up in somebody else's? And if it's locked up in somebody else's, why? So lockup actually helps us determine, do we have inefficiencies in our billing process, inefficiencies in our collection process, or inefficiencies in both? Now there's a benchmark on your worksheet for realization lockup. And the median realization lockup for Clio law firms is 38 days. It takes a little over a month for work in progress to end up on a bill, is what this is saying. Well, Ardo's going to correct me in the back. That's why I'm pausing here. But we have basically a little over a month of annual revenue that is in an unbilled state. Right? So we can't collect on it. Is that better?
All right, that's much better.
There we go. A thumbs up from the statistician. And that carries over and is added onto by collection lockup, which is the amount of annual revenue in terms of days that is currently in a billed but uncollected state. That money is sitting in your client's bank account rather than in yours. It's locked up in the wrong place. And the median collection lockup day for Clio using law firms right now is 45. So that's a month and a half of revenue that's locked up. Then there's total lockup, which is actually both of those combined. And for Clio using law firms, and again, this has never been published before, so you guys are kind of the first people to really start to play with this data, is 97 days. So over 3 months of a firm's annual revenue can be locked up in either an unbilled or uncollected state. And that tells me that firms have a lot of room to improve. Because if your money is locked up in somebody else's bank account, that means you can't pay your bills. It means you can't pay your wages. That means you might have to borrow money to do that. Or you might lose out on billable time because you're spending time on collections and chasing down that money. So being able to realize that you have this revenue, but it's just not in your bank account, is a really big area of improvement. And one of the things we researched was, how can we be using technology to leverage up our performance? So what we did was we took a look at 11 different billing and collection features that exist in Clio right now. You all have access to this. And we looked at firms throughout 2022 that were either using this feature or not using this feature to determine if it correlated with improved outcomes. And the outcome was yes. Using these features actually correlates to both higher realizations and higher collection rates for the law firm. Now, it's not really that surprising, right? If you're using the Clio tool to help you, it should help improve your firm's performance. But we were able to quantify that to a really surprising degree. This is the improvements correlated to realization rates based on these features. So in cohort A, there are law firms using this feature. In cohort B, there are law firms not using this feature. What we saw for cohort B, those not using the features, is that they had the lower realization rate. And the correlation for firms using the individual features is a pretty big jump in realization rates. So email bill sending. I'm just going to use Clio to send my bill via email. actually led to an 18-point jump in realization. It took it from 73% to 91%. That's more time that you already worked, that you already recorded, actually ending up on a bill for a client. That's you not giving yourself a haircut. The same with outstanding balances, where we saw that it jumped to 88% from 70%, and bulk billing, which is one of my favorites, which jumped from 78% to 94%. Those are the correlations between these two groups, right? And so if you want to improve your realization rate, that means you're not going to be working more. It means that you're just going to use a feature to help you either generate the bill or send the bill. These features lead to these better outcomes. And why do they lead to these better outcomes? I think it's because they help you automate collections. So it gives you some certainty that, yeah, if I put this hour on the bill, Clio's going to follow up and get me paid. Or you've already actually gotten paid for it using things like trust request and other fee forward features to get an advanced fee deposit that's in your trust account right now. And because Clio does both the collection via Clio payments and your trust account ledgers for you, we even do reconciliation. You're like, that's no longer a headache to have to collect that in advance. And I know the money's there, so I'm going to bill the hour. And lastly, we saw a really unexpected outcome. There's a feature in Clio called bill approval workflow. It's where you have like your bookkeeper or your office manager or somebody else in your firm generate the bills, and then it comes to you, the lawyer, to approve them. Our expectation when we saw this is that this is where the realization rate is going to drop. This is where lawyers are going to look at those time entries and be like, that was too much. But surprisingly, it also saw an increase in realization. It was 7 points. It was the lowest, but it was still positive. Yeah. So we think that actually indicates that lawyers are starting to be more confident in the value that you all are providing, and that, darn it, you should get paid for it. Which is, I think, not kind of a noble sentiment when you think about it. Yeah. We did the same type of work for collection rates, all right? So I've now sent a bill to my client. Do I get paid? And it turns out that utilizing these features correlated with a higher collection rate as well. Now, while this does not look as dramatic as the first set with realization, this is just as impactful. So we see that email bill sharing jumps from 85%, is that 85? 86, sorry, +4, to 90%. Outstanding balance feature where you just like, hey, you've got a couple unpaid bills, here's a link to pay them. Jumps you up 3 points to 87%. And stored payment methods correlated with a jump up to 89%. This is important because not only are these firms having a higher collection rate, but remember, they're also passing on a greater number of hours with all of these bills and the correlation. And so these firms that are using this are finding that they're both able to send more billable hours to their clients, and their clients are more willing to pay them. You're not getting that haircut that we saw in the lawyer funnel as bad as the firms that aren't using this. And it extends even beyond that to other benefits. When we looked at Clio payments and how does it impact the speed by which your bills are paid, we found that firms using Clio payments actually get paid twice as fast as firms that are downloading the bill and transmitting it in some other way. Probably fax or stamps, right? Yeah, which, hey, some clients like that. But if you can move the rest of your clients to electronic payments, it gets even faster. This is a bit of a difficult chart to make out, but I want you to take a look actually at the far right, the tiniest blue bar on the far right. That represents law firms that have 75% or more of their bills being sent electronically. They have leaned into electronic billing. What it tells us is that half of their bills that they issue are paid 3 days later. Done. And as we go into the higher percentages from left to right, all the way across, 60%, 70%, 80%, the firms that have leaned in and relied upon electronic billing are always paid faster. And so that's a really interesting outcome that even in the worst case scenarios, right, where I'm trying to track down those people who are 80% or above, I'm still well ahead of those other law firms that are out there that might be struggling because their lockup might be too high now. They might be having to rely upon lines of credit because they just aren't able to collect. So that leads us to our next section.
So, how does your firm compare? We're going to take a look at these insights and we're going to apply them to your firm. So in front of you, you have your worksheet printed out, dinosaur blog style. But if you do want to do it digitally within the Clio Cloud Conference app, you can pick up our fillable PDF. So your choice, whichever one you'd like to do. If you do take a look at the worksheet in front of you, we're going to work through it from the start. So your first line item there is utilization. We're going to start there. So utilization rate measures your workload and your productivity. And you can calculate the utilization rate, it's hard to say, by dividing billable hours worked by the number of hours worked in a day. So go ahead and do that now.
Now, those of you who have your laptop, you can just dig this out of your Clio dashboard. It's in the firm dashboard and it will tell you your utilization rate. And we've also included the benchmark utilization rate that you just saw on the slide on your worksheet. So you have something to compare it against. Are you higher? Are you lower? Is there a good reason for either of those? And there can be, right? So this is where you can start to compare yourself against the average.
And again, if you have a question, Ardo, we've got one hand down here if you want to pop on up.
I'm pretty loud.
Okay, go ahead.
We have a flat fee practice. Is there another way to do this?
Do you want to repeat that?
So I'm going to repeat the question, and that is there a way to calculate utilization rate with a flat fee payment? The answer is kind of. Or the standard lawyer answer, it depends. So the way to do this in Clio is to actually track non-billable hours as billable hours. So use your time tracker, use your activity descriptions, but in the modal, there'll be 2 check boxes for non-billable time, non-reporting time. Checking both of those means that that time that you're recording won't end up on the bill, but it will be in Clio and will count towards your utilization rate. No,
Good question.
It's not a perfect system, but it'll get you close. Yeah.
Okay. Your next line item is realization. This is measuring the potential value of the work you've performed. And you can determine it by dividing the number of billable hours invoiced by the number of hours you worked. Any questions on that one? Excellent. Okay. Next up is collection rate. So you're measuring the ability to capitalize on the work you performed here. You can determine it by dividing the number of hours collected by the number of hours invoiced. We're doing fast calculators. Do we need another minute?
Next, we're going to take a look at 3 different types of lockup. The first of which is realization lockup, which measures inefficiencies in your billing workflow. And lockup is always calculated in terms of days. And so this is the math. It is your current work in progress divided by last year's collections multiplied by 365 to represent a year. So if you look at your worksheet a little bit further down in the text, we do include instructions on where to pull this out of Clio. The next is collection lockup. And this is going to help you determine, do I have inefficiencies in getting my clients to pay me? And I think almost uniformly, every lawyer will say, yes, my clients are really bad about paying me. We actually did a survey and have stats in this year's Legal Trends report about that. And about 41% of lawyers say that they struggle to get their clients to pay on time, but 84% of clients said they pay on time. So who are you going to believe? This is why we have math. And in this, you're going to take your outstanding accounts receivable, so all those unpaid bills, you're going to divide those by last year's revenue, and again, multiply by 365. And as we talked about, there are instructions on where to pull these numbers directly from Clio Manage, such that you can do these calculations on your own and have an accurate comparison against those benchmarks that we just published. So here in Clio Manage, we'll go to reports. There are several reports that we'll utilize, our accounts receivable and our work in progress reports. I tell you exactly which line in those reports to pull out. And then how do you get your annual revenue, last year's fiscal collections? We're going to go to our billing history and pull that information out there. And from then, we can calculate our lockup. And if we have all three of those numbers, we can actually calculate what's called total lockup, which is the combination of realization lockup and collection lockup. The median for that in Clio using law firms is 97 days. So just a little over 3 months of a law firm's revenue is potentially at risk because it's locked up either in this unbilled state or in an uncollected state. And who knows what's going to happen to your client in 3 months, right? So it's better to get that bill out the door and get it paid as quick as possible. And that turns us back to those business levers that we talked about before.
So if we pause for just a second, can I get a quick show of hands? Are we feeling good about the math? Are we back in high school math class? Yes, I got a thumbs up. Okay.
Okay.
As a reminder, if you are having trouble, don't be shy. Throw your hand up. It's not every day you get to have a staff data scientist help you out with this kind of thing. Okay. So go ahead.
Yeah. So there are 11 features that we took a look at. You have a description for each of those features. What does it do? So that way you can decide, is this something that I can utilize in my law firm? We also tell you the improvements that correlate to that particular feature. So I do want to caution, when you implement one of these features in your law firm, right, it might say like plus 18 points on the worksheet. The way we did this math was we looked at, is the feature being used or is the feature not being used? But there's a lot of other information that circles in a real life scenario, like all the other features you're using. And so your realization rate might already be high, and this will bump it up, but it might not be the plus 18 points that you see on this worksheet. So just let's temper expectations. But what we're going to be asking you is...
Okay, so the good side thing is, like, no matter what your upside is, all upside. So we want to be still thinking about it from that perspective. Mm-hmm. If you're moving to the next sections, we're into the new chart in your worksheet here. This is the business levers section. So we're going to look at the questions around, keep going. Third page is where we're providing. This is why I brought it up on stage. It's really helpful. First thing we're going to answer is, which KPI levers will you implement in your firm? So go back, take a look at this big chart. And look at the ones that kind of stick out to you. Within your workflow, you might not be using them already. You're thinking like, hey, that seems like a one I could probably manage to implement. And then for your next one, you're going to look at what the potential impact of focusing on that lever could be. So the percentages are available in the chart there. As Joshua said, it's not a, done and dusted, oh, there's plus 18%, I'm off to the races. But you are going to see a market improvement. And then lastly, on this page, make a specific actionable goal that will help you implement your chosen KPI levers. So we've all been to conferences, right, where, hey, I'm going to do all this great stuff, but really we walk away with maybe too many great ideas if you're here at ClioCon. So making that really specific and actionable for you will help make sure that you actually take the action. So we're going to give you a few minutes to do that right now.
So if you are a firm that feels like you're struggling with getting your clients to pay, right? You can take a look at these business levers that relate to collection, like automated bill reminders, where Clio will send out a reminder at a schedule that you set, and they'll just get a link to click here and pay now. And I can tell you, looking at Clio's data, that this has actually collected hundreds of millions of dollars for law firms without them having to do anything other than go to the settings page in Clio and turn it on. Right? Now, it's not hundreds of millions of dollars for one law firm. Just, let me be clear on that. But hundreds of millions of dollars. Yeah. And so that's one way you can utilize this. If you're a flat fee firm that is looking to make sure that you get paid the entirety of your flat fee, right? You can take a look at trust requests and having that money deposited into your trust at once. Because as we know, in most jurisdictions with flat fees, you have to earn the whole thing. And so this way we can handle your trust accounting for you, but you'll have that money in the bank ready to go. Or you could take a look at a feature like the stored payment method, which will allow your client to enter their payment details securely into Clio that you can then, with the proper engagement agreement, bill against. You're like, hey, your bill is due. I'm just going to do the wireless check transfer right now. Thank you very much. So there's lots of different problems that can be solved here. And that's why we looked at so many different billing and collection features.
Okay, are we feeling good about that page? I think y'all need a little bit more coffee today. I do.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, now I did trap you next to a neighbor for a reason. So what I want you to do is turn to someone who is within reasonable speaking distance of where you are right now and talk to them and ask them and tell them yourself, which KPI will you be focusing on and why? All right. All right, how was that discussion? Did we have any cool points coming up? Any brave souls want to shout out what they're focusing on? Payment plan feature, love it. Anyone else doing payment plan feature? Yeah, I saw a hand. Cool. Okay, so we're gonna spend a little bit of time talking about how we're gonna find your next step. Here's the next set of questions from your worksheet. We're gonna look at what happens if I do nothing. They really think about that question because it sounds rhetorical, right? What happens if I do nothing? Well, I'm not supposed to do nothing. That's not why I came to the conference. But really think about it. What is the risk to you, to your business, if you don't spend the time to improve these areas? Then we're going to get into what areas specifically you want to see growth in. Growth can look different for different folks, right? Different years, you might have different growth goals. We're going to look at that one area we want to improve. And crucially, we're going to look at who is part of your team. Who is helping you make this change happen, right? Who else needs to be involved? Are there other decision makers, other stakeholders, people who need to be consulted, or people who should be deeply involved in the change you want to make? Okay, so spend a few minutes working on that page of your worksheet.
One of the things we talked about in this year's legal trends report is how inflation is getting the best of law firms. That even with the average 4% year-over-year rate growth in lawyer hourly fees, law firms are being dragged backwards because the non-lawyer hourly fees are actually not keeping up. So that's one example of what happens if I do nothing. Quite frankly, inflation might pass you by. And so you might be earning the same amount of money, but it will be worth less because you did nothing.
Okay, then as we spend a few minutes here, again, I'll be looking for brave souls in the audience. What does growth mean for you? I want to hear from you. Don't make me pick on you. All right, my friend in the coat. What does growth mean for you?
Yeah, we're looking at Clio for clients.
Clio for clients, cool. Yeah, so growth for you looks like a better client experience?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
It does mean a better client experience, and we were just discussing, who members of our team would be involved with that. And
yeah.
We're talking about our legal assistants, getting familiar with that feature in Clio, but we're familiar with a lot of these other business levers, and I think our next step is the Clio for Client app.
Awesome. There is documentation at help.clio.com for clients on how to use the app. So that's something you can just kind of share and email to them.
Yeah, it looks fantastic.
We had a question right here, right in front of you.
Right? Yeah.
My favorite student.
Well, under your question, I was going to say I'm looking to increase revenue and reduce the actual number of cases.
Looking to increase revenue, but reduce the number of cases. So we do actually have something that's comparable here. And when we look at the 2019 Legal Trends Report, where we looked at growing, stable, and shrinking law firms, growing law firms were actually increasing their revenue at twice the rate of the amount of clients that they were bringing in, and 3 times the rate of the amount of new timekeepers they were bringing in. And they did that by increasing their utilization rate. That top of the lawyer funnel carried all the way down and led to an increased revenue that was 112% greater over a 5-year period. And what they did was they increased their utilization rate from 28% all the way up to a lofty 33% over the course of 5 years. And I'm being sarcastic. That's a very small change, but it led to huge growth in revenue without having to drag the rest of the law firm up that high at the same time. So utilization rate, that would be where I would focus for that. Mm-hmm.
I love that as an example too, where what growth means to us personally is just a lot more nuanced, right? It's not just necessarily hitting that one KPI and making it go up, even though that is absolutely what we're walking you through here today. So keep that in mind as you're setting these goals. Does anyone else want to share?
We keep hearing from this side of the
Yeah, we're going to need, oh yeah, here we go. We've got...
gentleman up here in the black shirt. Is it black? The light's really bright.
Yeah, keep coming. Keep coming.
Gentleman in the glasses. Yeah.
So I'm planning on focusing on the automated bill reminders. We are seeing a fairly lower realization rate than we're seeing on the average. So I would like to bring this realization up and reduce our lockup, get some more money in the operating accounts.
Nice. So what I think is interesting about the automated billing reminder feature is it's a collection feature, but realization is when you're giving yourself that reduction. So you have to kind of buy into the fact that the automated billing reminder feature will get that money for you. So include it on the bill. Don't write yourself down. But as I think our data shows, it definitely correlates with both a higher realization rate and a higher collection rate. So give it time. I think you're going to see positive results.
All right. Oh, yeah. If we come over to this side of the stage. Hand up. Thank you.
Do we call in the back of the room after this?
Absolutely. So get ready.
Hi. We'd like to grow our collection rate. Do you have any suggestion on what's better, weekly billing or biweekly billing?
Ooh, that is a great question. So it does depend on the client, right? We do see that business clients tend to be open to a payment profile that's shorter than we see with just individuals. But it's not something that you can just generalize, unfortunately. So I don't know your practice, but if you have businesses, I would talk to them about their payment cycle, and they probably do have, if they're a business as a client, a bi-weekly or every other week payment cycle as a part of their finance department, and that'll work perfectly for them. With an individual, we mostly see payment profile settings in Clio for 30 days with payment due within another 30 days. I think you can shorten that, and that might be where you have the improvement. So don't expect to be paid at the end of 2 months. Expect to be paid when the invoice is given. The ways that you can encourage that are you can actually provide a automatic percentage-based discount in Clio. So like if you pay within 10 days, we'll take 2% off the bill, right? And Clio will just calculate that for you. And giving yourself a 2% haircut at the collection rate is much better than giving yourself a 2% haircut at the realization rate, because that's a much bigger chunk of your potential revenue that you're cutting off. So that's the better place to accept a haircut.
And now, actually, you are my favorite student. You have 2 copies of the client-centered law firm in front of you. So, but the position could be open for competition. Can we hear from the back of the room? Big hands up because we can't see you very well.
Oh.
All right. A brief soul. Thank you.
Is consumer-facing clients getting billed on a 30-day cycle because clients prefer a 30-day billing cycle, or is it because practitioners haven't yet experimented with a bi-monthly or weekly cycle?
The answer is we don't know. That's just not something that you guys tell us via Clio. It's just what we see. And so I wish I could answer that for you. All I've got is the data. Now, why do you do it?
Because that's the way we've always done it.
That's the answer.
That sounds like a great experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and actually, one thing that's really interesting about an experiment like that is you don't have to do it for all of your law firm, all of your clients at once, right? If I want to just try it, I can say to the next client, your payment cycle is 15 days, right? And then see how that worked with that one client. And then, okay, if it worked and I liked it, now I'm going to try it with 3 clients. If that works and I liked it, congratulations, everybody, you're on 15 days. But we have a lot of flexibility as a service industry to be able to pick and choose. So long as the rate is reasonable, that's the ethical guideline, go for it, experiment.
Love that. Maybe one more. Oh, yeah.
Hello. My name is Catherine. I'm the firm administrator for the law office of John B. Henry III in Texas. So I do the billing for our office. And one of the areas I want to see improvement on or see growth in is, it's a phrase we use, we call it skin in the game. Because like when clients, because we have different fee structures that we take, because I'm the daredevil of the group, and I'm like, let's try this. Let's see how this works. And we've seen a phenomenal change in our billing, of course, but there's still this element of skin in the game. Like if we're not getting, what I want to say, like when the clients end up in a post-pay scenario, we see there's like a plummet in client participation when there isn't that skin in the game. And so we're still trying to tweak those numbers. Of course, trust retainers absolutely resolve 80% of that. But then you still have those lingering cases where it's like, we need that that skin in the game so that the client participation, because it kind of like spirals out of control where it's like, no payment, no documents. You know, it's like not from us, but the clients. And so what I want to see is like, what KPIs should we be running to kind of circumvent that so that we can have a better visual of how we can meet it before we're at that block in the road, I guess. That would be a better way of saying it.
Gotcha.
I don't know if I make...
Do you mind if I tackle?
Please.
Yeah. So the KPI that I would take a look at is collections there. And the reason is I would take a look at a specific feature, the evergreen trust amount feature. And what this does is it enables you to set a minimum trust balance that if the billed amount ever goes below that, right, you will get prompted that it's time to reach out to that client. And we're not going to wait until things get out of hand. So the evergreen trust feature will be like, hey, bing, they're below $5,000, send out a new trust request. And then that gives you a trackable invoice. The second thing that I would recommend is take a look at our new Matter Stages feature and really take a look at setting up stages for clients where you know roadblocks are going to occur, right? Like submitted their documents. And that way you can tell at a glance where every matter is, and that will give you the idea of when you might need to action. So I hope that helps. Was that good advice?
That sounds good.
All right.
Great, yeah.
Can you repeat what you said
Yes.
about Clio, just what the function's called in Manage?
The evergreen trust amount is a collection-based feature that is...
Matter Stages?
Yeah.
Matter
Stages, yeah, which is a new feature that we just launched. Yeah.
Yes, no problem. The other thing you might consider is taking a look at the communications that you have planned out for your clients. So if you notice any trends, maybe you've got emails that aren't being delivered, maybe there's a different cadence you could test or a different medium, text reminders, that sort of thing could really be helpful in changing that pattern before it spirals, as you said. Okay.
Yeah, concerning flat fees, I wanted to share a workaround we've had that's been successful. Is you take that flat fee, apply it immediately to your operating account, and then you just bill your time as normal. When you get to the end of the work, if you came in under that amount, you just invoice with, however you want to code it, a fully earned retainer or whatever you want. Use Clio invoice templates to sort of not hide, but make that look acceptable to the client on the invoice. And then at the end, they still get an itemized invoice with line-by-line activities for the exact flat fee. And then if you go over your flat fee, you put a discount. So you know now the value of your work, how much you lost. And then you can also tell the client, hey, I did $500 more work, but I wrote it off for you. And it makes you look good that way too. So something to consider for flat fees.
Yeah. There's also a feature in Clio Complete called the Matter Budget feature, where I can set like my Matter budget for a flat fee as what I think is going to be profitable. And then as I record time or expenses against that, I can see, am I coming up to it? Am I halfway there? Am I 75%? And it's got some built-in notice features as well. So that can give you like up-to-date feedback as well as the invoice method that you were talking about. That is the Matter budget feature, part of Clio Complete.
Okay. So, change can be hard.
No. So one of the things that Richard Susskind, and he's the guy who wrote The End of Lawyers, as well as Tomorrow's Lawyers, he says this in every speech, is it's really tough to tell somebody who's making lots of money that its business model is wrong, right? You guys are running law firms. You're lawyers. You're great. And that's why we talked about as part of the legal defense report that firms are improving and you guys are doing well. Just that there's room to grow. And so don't take anything we've said today as us kind of discouraging you, but instead to show you've gotten so far and you're almost to the next level. And can we help get you there? So view this as an opportunity to be better than you already are. How do we go from good to great? The next thing that you might have to think about is how do we really calculate value now? So we've heard a lot of people talking about flat fees, right? And the interesting thing about flat fees is you giving yourself a value. The service I'm going to be providing is worth $5,000, right? And getting to that number required experimentation. It required sometimes doing more work for less, right? But because you've assigned a value to yourself or to that action anyway, you can then start to adjust around it. And doesn't mean that you have to think about flat fees as easier or harder, just that it's different. And some of the interesting things that we're seeing, for example, as a part of our personal injury add-on is different ways to calculate value in your settlements, right? Getting the money now versus getting the money later. In Florida, where they calculate contingency fees based on like percentages per amount of the fee, right? So I can charge X for the first $100,000, but then I have to charge less for anything over $2 million, right? There are all different ways to calculate value, and they're all valid, but you might have to adjust how you think about it and how you structure your work. Flat fee in particular is about productivity. Can I get the same amount of work done in less time and less effort? Because my fee's not going to change. So if I can just get it done in 2 hours rather than 3, extra time, more money, yay me. And so that's how we think about value in a flat fee is productivity. So be prepared for that.
And lastly, there are a lot of factors to change. So internal enablement, if you're working with a larger team, you got to make sure the rest of your team is on board, right? You got to make sure they have the right training, they understand how that new feature works, and that they should be using it. If it's just you got to modify your own habits, right? So it's going to feel more comfortable to do something the way you've always done it, but you are going to see the real benefits when you're able to make those changes, along with resistance and fear and all of the wonderful things that come along with change. But the thing about change is that without it, we do not get to transform the legal experience for all. So even though everyone in this room is doing great, doing better, improving year over year, we can go higher. All right, so we're into the last section here, staying accountable. So I mentioned that it's really easy to leave a conference and feel super jazzed. In fact, it absolutely follows, I just realized this, the Thunberg curve from this morning, right? So, oh my gosh, I am the best lawyer ever. I have so many things to implement in my firm. Oh wow, that's my daily life. There's my daily life. And what was that conference again? I'm not sure. So what I'd like to challenge you to do today is to really commit to yourself what this is going to look like for you. So the last thing to fill out in your workshop is how will I keep myself accountable to making the improvements I've identified? Take a minute to go ahead and do that now.
The people you've been talking to might be a great accountability buddy. Mm-hmm. Have you exchanged business cards? Yeah.
And that does bring us to our next slide, so we can jump right there. So yeah, while you're going to do that, you're going to fill that box out on your form there, but you're also going to think about what your accountability action is. So as Joshua mentioned, you've got the people in this room. This is your community. This is your team. If you have had a nice chat with somebody about the goals that you have in this workshop, exchange your information. You can scan your badge. You can get their contact information right inside the Clio Conference app. Exchange LinkedIn info. People still do that, right? You can even just set a reminder in your calendar, 30 days from now, 60 days from now, 90 days from now. Make sure that I go back and check in with the commitments I've made. You can tweet me. You can tweet Joshua. Joshua loves to be tweeted at
Joshua Lenon.
Yeah, absolutely.
One in the middle.
And we would love to see the progress that you're making in your plans. So challenge you to do that right now.
So there's one other place where we think accountability can live. How many people here are members of the law community, our private community for Clio users?
Oh, that's not a very good percentage.
That's not enough. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to need you to help on that.
Yeah. So the law community is a private community for Clio users. You sign in using your Clio login account, and it actually has different sections by practice area, by firm size. People have been sharing templates on there. And so it's a great place for you to go and have like a good water cooler action. And one of the things that we'd like to do is start an accountability thread there. So I have chosen to focus on this KPI for this time frame. And then check in with each other. Let's see how everybody's doing. Let's celebrate successes. Let's learn from experiments that didn't quite turn out the way we thought they were. This is the place where we can share that information and get lots of tips and tricks on how Clio is best serving you guys directly.
So the QR code up on screen will take you right into the law community, and we will have a post. It actually is probably up by now, and if it's not, it'll be up very shortly.
Yeah.
Where you can check into that thread.
And there's also scavenger hunt points for joining it.
Yes, you do get scavenger hunt points for first joining, so that even better, another bonus. All right, we have about 10 minutes left in the session, so we would like to open up the floor for any additional questions that you might have for myself or Joshua. Oh, okay, we got one in the front, we got one back here. We're just gonna have our mic runners coming around.
I think we'll start at the back and work.
Yeah, let's start at the back, yeah.
Hi, just quickly, you mentioned Clio Complete. What is that?
Clio Complete is using both Clio Grow and Clio Manage together with some of our advanced enterprise features. That includes matter budgets, that includes advanced task and advanced task tracking. So not only assigning a task, but assigning kind of a time frame and seeing progress for that. And so there are additional features that we see a lot of larger law firms request. And we've put those in Clio Complete.
Great. Our next one is at the front. Yep, there we go.
All right.
There were some interesting numbers around payment plans. And that's something that we utilize, the negative. And I'm curious if you can tease out a little bit more what the pro-con was on that. And you still look at it, obviously, as a benefit.
Yeah. So in the legal trends report, when we looked at the collection KPIs, can I jump all the way back to that one?
Yeah. You might keep talking all day.
Something interesting stood out when we looked at the payment plan feature. So it did increase realization rate, but when we got to collection rate, it
how long is our leg? We're getting closer.
Here we go. So if you look at the far right for you guys, you're going to see that collection payment plans actually negatively impacted collection rate. So it correlated to a 2% drop in collection rate. And when we thought about it, this actually made sense, but it took like kind of seeing it and realizing, oh wait, we're not thinking about this right. So collection rate measures when an invoice gets paid, right, and how much of that invoice is paid. Payment plans stretch that time period out. And so there's this long period of time where the invoice just isn't marked as paid. And so the way we do the statistics is it kind of just drops off. But then when we jumped into, well, what actually happens to the revenue for the law firms, we found something really interesting. Law firms that are using payment plans had a correlated increase in monthly revenue per lawyer was 49% higher than law firms that weren't using payment plans. And depending on the size of your law firm, it could be even higher. It correlated to a 71% increase in monthly collected revenue per lawyer for solos, just like huge bump. When we tried to classify it in actual dollars, I think like the average amount with that correlation, so there's a whole bunch of math there, ended up being something like $15,000 higher was the average per solo lawyer. So payment plans seems like it hurts your law firm because it lowers your collection rate. But then when you look at the money that's actually in the bank, it's ridiculously high in the math. And so it's an opportunity that I think really opens up a lot of potential for law firms. The other thing that I mentioned in our legal trends report presentation was that for the last 4 years, the average installment for payment plans was $300 a month. So I think that opens up the affordability of legal services. It greatly increases the number of clients that you can handle. And it also gives you something that's called predictable revenue. And there's actually a book on this that we read at Clio, where sometimes it's better to not get everything up front if you know you're gonna have to write part of it off, right? I'm gonna send you this huge bill, but you're only gonna pay half of it. As opposed to, I'm gonna give you this bill, but I'm gonna let you pay all of it over time. And that predictable revenue can be a better business model. And what we've seen for firms utilizing payment plans, and I mentioned this with automated billing as well, is they've already collected hundreds of millions of dollars, but there's actually double that amount scheduled and coming to those law firms in the future. So it's a really interesting way to get predictable revenue, increase your monthly collected amount, while at the same time watching your metrics go down. So, yeah, did that answer your question on payment plans?
Clear as mud.
Yeah, that's what I aim for. Payment plans are good for law firms and for clients. There we go.
I'm so glad that someone asked that question, because otherwise I'd be wondering if you were paying attention to the slides, because one of the things you know about us is that we're very honest about the data that we publish, because from a marketing perspective, I hate that.
Oh.
Any other questions?
Oh, no.
Oh, sorry. Okay, you're back there. Yeah.
Y'all answered part of it, but I had to answer to that because I do the billing. So when we offer payment plans in our office, what you want to see happen, right? And I think that's the underlying question that he may have had was like, we have way more work that's been done than what we've collected on, right? Mm-hmm. And so I guess the learning curve that you can kind of take with that is, yes, you can still offer payment plans, but you can get because Clio has it where it's set up for you to be able to do that, is to take a lump sum up front and then make the residual payment smaller so that you're not really working in a post-pay scenario. It's more like a on-time scenario, because I think that's the fear that a lot of people have, specifically if you're paying with credit cards or something like that, like you don't want to see a stop payment, so take ACH payments.
Yeah, that's built in. That's part of Clio payments. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, that's actually a really great idea. It's very similar to the Japanese just-in-time model of car production, which is very interesting. When you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly it. To where you order a bunch of parts for a car that you need, but not all the parts for all the cars that you need, and that way you're constantly cycling. It sounds like you've discovered how to do that with payment plans. So that's really neat.
Fantastic. And maybe our last question over here.
Hi. So as to the 37% of the 2023 legal trends for utilization, is that percentage based on all employees in the firm or all billable employees in the firm?
All billable employees in the firm. Yeah, because that's what's being recorded is the tracked time that they're entering. So one of the things we looked at for the legal productivity index was, should we normalize the amount collected and the amount billed per timekeeper, which is what we ended up going with, or per number of users in the law firm. And what we found is that per number of users in the law firm didn't really represent the labor that was going into creating the build time. And so it skewed the numbers in a way that we didn't think was as honest as we should be. And that's why we presented it that way. But you're right. You do have to kind of account for the return on investment for non-billable employees. I think that we show that if you're able to increase the utilization rate for your billable employees, it oftentimes is very much worth the investment in non-billable employees to make that happen. Non-billable employees, you tend to pay them a lot less than your lawyers charge. So, good return on investment.
All right. I think that's it for us. Thank you so much for participating.